The Secrets of Dumbledore is about to come out, so I decided to go back and revisit when we first met Newt Scamander and found the Fantastic Beasts. In 1926, Newt Scamander arrives at the Magical Congress in the United States with a magically expanded briefcase that houses magical creatures and their habitat. But when they get loose and the American authorities are after Newt, he must do whatever it takes to find these creatures, as on the side, the relationships between magical people and non-magical people start to get shaky. But before I properly start with my review for Fantastic Beasts and where to find them, I want you to start the conversation about it in the comments below. Share your thoughts on the film, share your excitement for the upcoming films, and I will be reviewing The Crimes of Grindelwald as well ahead of the release of The Secrets of Dumbledore. And of course, if you love movies and TV, this is the place to be, so consider clicking that subscribe button so you don't miss any future conversation on your favorite movies and TV. And back in 2016, 7 years ago at this point, I think there was enough time between The Deathly Hallows Part 2 and this film to create this need, or at least this want by fans for a new dive into this world. Not another Harry Potter film, not something right after, not something even directly connected, but we wanted more of this world. We wanted an expansion on it. And even though basing a film on a fictional book about magical creatures written by a fictional character is a weird thing to do, it's a weird thing to base a movie, or in this case a series of movies, off of, I think they started off from a promising place, from a creative enough place, given that they brought back David Yates, a director of some of the best Harry Potter films, most of the latter ones. And you even had Eddie Redmayne, who was fresh off of his Oscar win, playing the lead character, and I think he plays this lead character very well. He is endlessly likable. He's this shy, awkward person that I think comes across as someone who's in the spectrum, who is not something you see a whole lot of as protagonists, and that makes him fascinating, because he's not someone that opens up to people, and the film treats that as his vulnerability, as the thing he has to overcome. He's carrying a lot of pain, where he's taking care of these animals, of these beasts, saving them, taking them to their natural habitat, rescuing them, and setting them free. But the film starts to show throughout that he has an uneasy relationship with his family, that he's hiding a lot of his past from Hogwarts, growing up, being friends with Lita Lestrange, played by Zoe Kravitz, who we'll get to in the next film. And so I've always thought Newt Scamander was a very compelling, interesting character that takes us on this very interesting journey that is an expansion of the wizarding world. This isn't a coming-of-age story. This isn't someone who is finding out about this magical world, but he is still someone who is incredibly passionate about it. And so through him, because he loves these creatures so much, and he understands so much about them, you're able to carry that sense of whimsy in the film that the earlier Harry Potter movies had. And so while we get an expansion, a deeper dive into this world because of who the lead character is, his passion carries that sense of awe and wonder that is oh so important to these films. Something else that the film does really well is comedy. I was so afraid of how they use Dan Fogler in this film, but Jacob Kowalski, who is our first lead Muggle character, he makes things really interesting. His comedic timing is fantastic. He gets a ton of laughs in this. That scene at the bar where they go to meet Tina's informant and he has the giggle water, the timing on there is impeccable.
I'm the only one like me.
He starts to form this relationship with Queenie that feels so genuine, that is so beautiful to watch, as they're both just super adorable with one another. And the sisters themselves tackle on a lot of the issues that the series is meant to tackle, given the time setting and the themes that it wants to discuss about their Jewish heritage. And then it discusses a lot of relationships between magic people and non-magic people. And then you have the whole pressure of the government that Tina works for. She's trying to prove herself because she put her ass on the line for someone. And so there's a nice contrast with her and Newt as well. The mistakes that they've made. She has been too open, too willing to try and help others, and he doesn't try to help others enough. Colin Farrell is also fantastic as Percival Graves. An obvious villain in the film, for sure. The way he's trying to exploit this kid, the pressure he puts on them, berating him, just clearly using him throughout this film to try and find this obscurus is a mark of a great villain, yes, but it's not played with a lot of nuance. So even though I like that darker part of the film, that I think the film in general balances it really well, carrying the whimsy, the wonder of the early Harry Potter movies, diving into the dark, seeding parts of the wizarding world like the latter Harry Potter movies. It has this great balance between the two tones that I think show the prowess of David Yates as a director. The music as well is fantastic. It situates you back in time exactly. It feels from a different era, and the theme of the darkest parts of the film, whenever we're following Graves and Credence, it feels very much like the Saw theme. I'm a huge fan of the Saw series, so hearing a theme that was so similar to that really hit the right notes. Maybe a little bit too similar, but similar nonetheless. For someone who likes it, it's really cool. And then on the creature side, it feels like this exciting adventure with this character that is so passionate about these creatures, and you start to understand them a little bit, particularly the scene where they go down inside of the briefcase and he guides Kowalski how to feed the creatures, how to interact with them, what are the rules, what are their names. That's so wonderful. That is a beautiful scene that just gives you the necessary insight into Newt Scamander. But before I continue with some of the other elements that I like in this film, I need to address the biggest issue that clicked on me when watching this film today for the purposes of recording this review. And that is that there are two movies in one. Two movies that don't seem to want to belong together until the third act. Until they actually converge, it doesn't feel like characters in the story of the Beasts are interested in the story of the Obscurus. It doesn't feel like the characters in the story of the Obscurus care at all about the Beasts until they properly converge, because the story structure demands so. So, getting a little bit ahead of myself, the third act of this film is when it gets great. When you have all of New York, after all the events of the film, at the entrance of the subway, the Magic Congress stopping them with a barrier, and then you have Graves, Tina, Newt trying to stop Credence, who was just let out the Obscurus. That's when the film picks up. Until then, you have two separate movies. Two movies I like. This kid that is holding back his magical power because of who his mother is. This woman that is aware of witches because Tina once tried to help the boy. And so you have this shaky relationship where the magic people want to keep their existence hidden from the humans, but then you have Percival Graves, who doesn't care about that because of something we're going to talk about in the third act. And they're about to find out. And everything that is happening is leading to that. And so you have this great dark story that carries all these cultural parallels of people trying to stay hidden and others finding out, and they're not going to take it well. And then you have this story of these magical creatures and this guy who's trying to rescue them, and then there's all these misadventures throughout the city. They are so fun, they are so whimsy, with the creature that eats coins, the little tree thing. You have that giant beast that wants to mate, the giant dragon that fits in whatever place he is, so he eventually goes to the teapot. That's great, but these two stories almost don't seem to connect. The story of the beast even feels like it was maybe better fit for a TV show, at least a mini-series of several episodes. And as we'll go through this series of movies, you start to notice that that is a pattern, that they feel that way in all of the films. So far, at least at the time of this recording, I haven't seen The Secrets of Dumbledore. And so even though I like these two stories, they feel like two separate stories. There's a constant disconnect where it doesn't feel like it's slowly building and they're converging for one another. It feels like they're happening at the same time, and by happenstance, they stumble onto one another. And that's a shame, because when they do converge, it's great. But it feels jarring and sudden. It feels mechanical and not organic. But again, that third act, that final portion of the film, is great. I love the conflict there with Credence having been exploited by this guy. I love Newt, who has eventually grown to trust other humans, to like other humans, with the little team that he formed throughout this, and he gives a chance to Credence because he knows what he's going through, because he once failed to save a little girl, which is another factor that helped him to shut down and shut off from opening up to someone else. And so it's a great third act where there's no clear bad guy or good guy yet. There's a victim, and it ends up painting the magical world in this very gray picture, where the Magical Congress, they don't give a chance to Credence and they just decide to obliterate him. They don't, eventually you'll find that out, but despite having Newt grow throughout the film to trust humans a little bit again, his point is proven right. That animals are better than humans, and that he just trusts these creatures better than he ever trusts a human. And eventually we have the reveal that Percival Graves was never a real person, and this was Grindelwald all along. It's not that it's a bad reveal within the story, within the writing, but to me it always felt bittersweet that we go from Colin Farrell to Johnny Depp. Now, the real life situation is a whole nother thing. I don't want to get into that, at least not in this film, because it wasn't a thing back then. And it felt like we could have just used the same actor, or at least it felt like we could have used Percival Graves as a follower of Grindelwald and not Grindelwald in disguise. And so it's a weird thing. It feels like a Scooby-Doo movie, where the villain that is so great throughout this film turns out it was someone else entirely. And that person that we grew to like as a villain was never actually there. It's such a weird note to end that part of the story on, but of course it's the first in a series. We'll see more of them. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is an interesting expansion and an exciting welcome back to the wizarding world, particularly for someone who grew up with the Harry Potter films. The characters carry this sense of whimsy and awe that is so integral for these films to work. They are charming, they are compelling, the creatures are fantastic, and it feels different from what came before. It is still very much trying to find its footing, where you have these two films battling against one another, but the mix of the tones works so well, and you feel like the world that you once loved is back. I'm giving Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them a B. But those are only my thoughts on Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I want you to start a conversation about it in the comments below. Share all the spoilers, everything you liked, everything you didn't, your excitement for Secrets of Dumbledore, and of course, if you like what you saw here, make sure to click the subscribe button so you don't miss any future conversation on your favorite movies, TV, and Fantastic Beasts. And I'll be back very soon in my reviews for Crimes of Grindelwald and Secrets of Dumbledore. Thank you to my channel members Bruna and Stuart for making this video possible, and I'll be back very soon. So until the next one, love each other, I love the movies.